We often come to a point in the creative process where we mess up. Now, it's not to say that every single project that we make is going to be perfect. There are always going to be some little flaws that only you can see and that nobody else will notice. But then there are the instances where just everything goes wrong. That project for me is a dress inspired by the Masque of the Red Death, and more specifically Bernadette Banner's version of the Masque of the Red Death. This kind of came at a point where I had just read the story because of school, and I felt so inspired by both the story and Bernadette Banner's design to create kind of an inspiration ball gown design of my own. I initially used Angela Clayton's bodice pattern from this pattern for the bodice of the dress, and I was just going to make a rectangular skirt to go with it. Now obviously, I did not read the pattern correctly, and I had assumed that I could just insert a zipper and all of the measurements will be good and proportional and would work out just fine. And because of that, I have this monstrosity. Now I have poly satin as the lining and outer layer while I layered tulle on top of it. Now the positives of this project. The ruching detail on both the front and sleeve side parts actually turned out pretty well. And the method I used to put the tulle on top of the poly satin layer worked out well. Sadly, that is the only thing that had worked out well. So the bodice is way too huge. Now granted, I have a larger chest than I do waist, but it's way too big for me. Now initially it doesn't look that bad, but here's where the pattern is, and here's where my waist is. Now if you are a larger individual, this would probably not seem like a big deal to you, but I'm very small and did not want to have to redo the entire project just to make sure the waist fits. The bust doesn't even fit either, it's just huge. Like, can you see that? How huge it is. And again, this is not of the fault of the pattern, it's the fault of me not reading the instructions. Because there's meant to be some sort of folding and hook and eye craziness, but I did not follow that. There's also the problem of the skirt. Now the skirt would look great, and the skirt actually turned out well. The underlayer with the poly satin turned out really well. But when I tried cutting the tulle layers, this happened. It wasn't long enough for the black layer, and so I decided to cut out another layer. Tulle is very shifty and will mess up on you if you cut it incorrectly. And if I had done this correctly, this amount for the dress would probably seem fine, but yeah, this is about guesstimated $60 worth of material. Then again, I started this project over a year ago, so it's probably not the most accurate estimation of how much I spent. But that, along with how big it is and the skirt messing up, I didn't even bother finishing this part, which is just where the back attaches to itself, because that's just my preferred method of finishing dresses. But it was just disappointing all around. Like, here's where my hips start. That's where the waist of this ends, is where my hips start, which is probably how the pattern was intended. But the fact it's so big, and I didn't feel like fixing it, and I probably could have fixed it, but with the whole skirt situation of, yeah, let's just add this tail, because I didn't cut this long enough, it just, not my finest moment. And I had just given up. I had given up, and I threw this in the corner of my room where I prayed that I would never ever see it again. It was one of those projects. So about a month ago, I found this red bedsheet at Goodwill. That seems to be my luck of always finding the prettiest fabrics that are always bedsheets at Goodwill. And that inspired me to try this project again. Discarding the horrible dress that I had made previously, I had decided that with the skills I had acquired over the past year, I felt like I was finally ready to do this again. And with a different pattern that I had done tests to see that it actually worked, I was ready to try again. And for the most part, it did go well. Like, everything is great. Like, the bodices worked out well, the skirt worked out well. The problem was, with the design that I wanted, I had, let's see, the bed sheet was both a flat bed sheet and a fitted bed sheet, which gives you more fabric to work with. And I thought, this may be a good opportunity to try a transformation dress. No, not the transformation dresses where it literally turns into another dress, but the transformation dresses of the 19th century, where it's literally the same skirt but a different top. One for more day-to-day wear and one for evening wear or balls. Now, I was not actually historically accurate because this top for the day wear probably would not be appropriate for the 19th century, but I wanted to try it anyway with this puff sleeve and the little off-the-shoulder design. Now, this bodice part is the same as the bodice part that I'm about to show you, except it has the addition of this puff sleeve part, and I added this rectangle of fabric to kind of make it a long sleeve to make it long sleeved. And the zipper in the back is upside down. That's a common thing that seamstress people do when we don't feel like sewing a million hooks and eyes and want to get in our bodice really easily. Now, my idea was to sew these little bar things on the tops and then sew the other side to the skirt. That way I can hook on the tops so that they don't move too much, and I can use the skirt for both of the tops. Yeah, that didn't work. It worked in theory because I had seen a video where someone did that type of method, but I like to be independent and be able to put on costumes by myself, and my poor brother had to help me put these on for a few fittings because I either sewed the bars too close to the skirt, or I placed them too far apart or too close together so it didn't line up properly. So a few times I had to steal my brother to help me put this on, which was not ideal. And then even after I sewed all the stuff on and I was trying to put on it by myself, it was just too much of a hassle, and I got really stressed and started crying because I didn't like how I had to struggle so much to put on a garment, especially one that I had spent so much time on and was so happy with, because this bodice and the other bodice as well and the skirt all turned out perfect. Like, I have zero complaints about how they turned out. I probably have to tuck the zipper in once I put it on, but it was perfect. Everything worked out perfectly. The trim I put on the other bodice, it all turned out perfect. There was just this one thing of I messed up somewhere on the bars trying to get the skirt and the tops together so that, like, when I lift my arms, you don't see my corset. And it just didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, and I was so upset. The latest trying on was a couple of days ago, and that's when I just burst into tears because I just could not handle the fact that stuff wasn't working and that I felt like I had spent so much time on this dress that it just felt like a waste. Because unlike the other one, I was actually happy with the majority of this dress ensemble, but I was just so defeated and I started crying. I had to go take a hot shower to try and calm myself down. And so I had to ditch the let's make this two bodice route, because I figured I have to look at my fabric stash, but I can probably make this a separate garment and just add a skirt to it and try and make it its own thing. So that meant I had to sew this bodice onto the skirt and add the zipper in the back going the correct way instead of upside down like previously stated. And this worked out so much better, even though it was not how I wanted it to be. Like, the trim is perfect, the skirt is perfect, when I have all the stuff underneath it, it's perfect. And so I just had to deal with the fact that I had failed so many times and found a million ways that would not work in order to find the thing that did work. And I'll show video clips of me wearing the dress in its full form. But this is exactly how I envisioned the dress. And it's funny, because the more expensive route of the first dress turned out worse than the attempt with the cheaper fabric. Like I think I spent almost $8 on the sheets from Goodwill, and it turned out so much better. Now granted, the trim I bought in bulk for $20, so it's probably an estimated $18 that this entire dress took, minus the other bodice, which I will deal with some other time when I am mentally prepared. So why am I posting this on the internet for all to see? I think it's important to understand that not everything you do is going to turn out perfect. Now, this is something that I have always struggled with, mostly because I'm not used to doing things halfway. I either want to do it the best I possibly can, or I won't do it at all. And so doing something like the first dress where, okay, some things did work, but the majority of them just did not work, made me feel so defeated. I hated the fact that I had spent so much time and effort on something that I would probably just throw away or use for something else. And that is a feeling that resonates now and will resonate in the future. No matter how good I get at sewing, no matter how good I get in my skill, those feelings will always be there and those projects will always be there. I will probably do something in the near future that I will mess up on and be just as defeated as I had felt currently. But we need to realize that whatever mistakes we make, we need to use those to benefit us in the future. Because with my learning process of the first dress to the second dress, or the second completed dress, I had to realize, okay, this bodice pattern didn't work. What do I do now? So a year later, found a different bodice pattern. Okay, this actually is working. Okay, this skirt is actually working, but I wanted to try something else, which is the bars and the double top with the skirt. That didn't work either, so I went, okay, what do I do now? I wanted this double top thing, and it didn't happen. So I had to accept that it wasn't going to happen in the sacrifice of actually getting a dress that I loved. And sometimes we do have to make those sacrifices. Our original plans may not go as planned, but this is why we have the skill of adapting and overcoming. Sure, your thing could turn out as total garbage, and it could just be the most horrendous thing you have ever made in existence. I've had many of those times. But you need to take those trash fires of clothing or trash fires of whatever project you are working on. This doesn't just apply to costuming. You need to take those failures, take those trash fires, take those things that you have messed up on and you never ever want to see again. You need to take those and adapt it and learn from it to make your future stuff better. So please don't ever give up if you make mistakes a lot of the time, especially if you're new to something or you're still learning or you're a professional. Because sometimes we get in the mindset that we're professional and so we should know all of these things. You're not gonna know everything. Everything that you do is trial and error. Even if you've done it a million times, there may sometimes be something that messes you up. So just keep going. Don't let those mistakes or failures hold you down to continue to make something a lot better. Because with every terrible trash project, there is a very good project that you do absolutely perfect on. So this is my current project. Well, it's finished now, so it's not really a current project, it's a finished product thing. This is what I call my death hood. Sounds very vulgar, but this is actually inspired by the Masque of the Red Death / depictions of death with the hood and stuff. Very fantasy. Like, it's very heavy. You wouldn't think that. But you have these details, little clasps, and the sleeves. And I drafted this pattern myself, which is something new that I'm not normally used to doing. And it just turned out perfect. One of the rare instances where that does actually happen. By perfect, I don't mean nothing went wrong. Perfect, I mean not a lot went wrong. The only thing that I do have a complaint about is the fabric that I used for the lining, I had run out of. And so the bottom skirt is not as full as the top skirt, but that's fine. I just wanted it to not be see-through and sheer when I wear it. So it's totally fine. I don't really care. It's kind of meant to stand as a standalone garment slash if you have a smaller silhouetted dress that isn't like super huge and poofy that you can wear underneath it. But the fabric is amazing. The methods I used worked out well. Again, I'll show video footage of me wearing it. The ties worked out well. Original design, original pattern. Obviously it is inspired by things, but I didn't have to use a commercial pattern. I used my own things. The hood. Yeah, my poor brother, I had to use them again because I can't, with drafting the hood, I can't see behind my head. So I had to use them for things. Shout out to him. He's great for dealing with my craziness. And it's just beautiful and fanciful, and I spent $100 on the material. Well, not just the material and the clasp, probably plus a few other things that I used on this. So I was so terrified that I was gonna screw up the project that I was just putting it off as much as I possibly could so that I wouldn't ruin the fabric. But it was worth taking that dive into my uncomfortable zone. Because again, $100 worth of materials. Didn't want to mess it up. Didn't want to ruin everything. But it was worth the risk because now I have a garment, fanciful costume thing that I absolutely love. Yeah, the raw edges on this part isn't really sewn either. But it's a non-fraying material. The lining isn't really a fraying material. So at this point, after working on it for a long time, I just said, forget it, I'm just gonna leave the edges raw. But with every one of your awful projects, you will have one that turns out really, really well and that you adore. So don't give up, don't let your mistakes hold you back, don't let your failures hold you back, because with everything you do wrong is an opportunity that you can learn and grow and become better at what you do.